voulez les avoir en anglais ou en français?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
Each team has 20 minutes to present its case to the judges. I will hold up a sign for the last 10, 5, and 2 minutes, as well as for the last 30 seconds of the presentation. During the last 10 seconds, I will indicate with my fingers the number of seconds remaining. If you have not finished your presentation after 20 minutes, you will be stopped in order to proceed with the Q&A period. The Q&A period of a maximum of 5 minutes is allocated to the jury at the end of the presentation. And please note that at any time you cannot say or reference the name or location of your university.
Bon après-midi, mesdames et messieurs, juges, Madame Trudel. Avant de continuer, pour la raison de cohérence, la présentation serait continuée en anglais. Merci. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Laurent Han. I would like to present to you my team, Gabriel Velasquez and Jesselyn Hanna. And today, we are very excited. Today, we will help Mrs. Trudel make a decision to present to the Minister of Transport that will make history in the Montreal's transportation system, Montreal transportation system. Currently, it is well known the Montreal system, the Montreal transportation system, throughout very many countries. However, there are always challenges in a growing country or any countries. So therefore, the current challenge is the distance, the transportation between the Montreal Island to the airport. Before we continue, we must define this challenge, which I will present you, Jesselyn, who will continue with the challenge. Thank you.
So Montreal has been known for its very well infrastructure with its buses and its metro stations. However, there's this opportunity due to the increasing traffic and due to the increasing passengers who keep on going or flying to Montreal and out. So there's this opportunity in order to decrease the congestion being formed from the airport to downtown. So as we have seen the increase of going back and forth of passengers to the Montreal Trudeau, there has been a huge congestion in our highways. So we are here to solve this challenge. How can you better manage your transport access modes between downtown Montreal and the airport? So where are you now? You have several modes. One is taxis, another is private cars, limousines, and you have, of course, both private and public buses that go from the airport to downtown. However, if you want to have a direct link to the airport from downtown, which most of us experience, the only way is through the roadways, that is by car, either by taxi or by personal car. This is why we want to provide, or we want to introduce a better way of transportation with a low cost and, of course, with a reasonable amount of time in order to reach your flight at a good time. And as you can see, the traffic is around 11.1 million passengers per year. Now, where do you want to go? You want to accommodate this increasing passengers coming into Montreal, and you also want to decrease the amount of congestion happening on the roadways from the airport to downtown. So as we have seen, there's an increasing amount over the years of passengers or visitors and residents flying out and coming back in. And this has been leading every single day to high amounts of congestion, also considering the infrastructure that's happening, like the road, like improving the roads from downtown to the airport. So how will you do it? The first one we would recommend is the Aerotrain. However, we found an improvement on the proposed Aerotrain recommendation. The second one is the Opus service improvement also, which Laurent and Gabriel will later on further talk about. Now, what are the key factors you should consider in order to find the best recommendation and how to implement it? One is pollution. As we've seen in 2004, we have estimated it to be around 1 billion. And since we are in 2013 today, we definitely believe this amount of pollution or CO2 emission has increased tremendously. So we should consider that in recommending to Transport Quebec which recommendation to implement. Second is the roadway congestion. As we have studied, one of the methods was reserving one lane for the 747 bus or any other bus to transport. However, this would further increase the roadway congestion, so we do not believe this is a very efficient way of transporting people. The third is the accessibility. We want the people who are taking the public transport to be at ease and not feel as if the public transport is a disadvantage to their ease. The fourth is the travel time. Of course, since you're going to the airport, we already have 3 hours of guarantee, or 3 hours that we should go beforehand to the flight. Therefore, we don't want to also add another hour or an hour and a half on the road traveling to the airport. So we want to minimize this travel time. And of course, we have the cost of the project. As any business person, you want to implement a project that's not too costly. So that is a very dominating factor. And of course, the cost for the customer. Because, of course, most of our customers are based in downtown, and we want them to be transported to the airport. We want to have something that's cost advantageous to them. We don't want it to be too expensive, and yet not too low priced, so that we would not have a disadvantage. Now, considering the 3 modes of transport, bus, train, and car, / taxi. Now, those are our major factors we considered. One is the pollution, which is the CO2 emission. The second is the cost for the customer. And the third is the customer ease, because since we already know we're going to have a 12-hour flight, a 24-hour flight, or whatever it is, and then you have the layoff or the transit time. So you already know that you're going to be imposed to a lot of time where you're going to suffer or get tired. So you want to have the least ease, at least with your luggages and being transported to the airport. So we have to take that into consideration. And the last one is the CO2 emission, which is the pollution, which is increasing tremendously. Now, compared to the 3, we find that the train has the least amount of travel time. 16 to 20 minutes is relatively pretty good. Compared to the other 2, which are bus and by car or taxi, you do not have to be imposed to traffic or weather conditions, etc. Second of all, the cost. We do realize it's a bit more expensive than the 747 bus, which was $8. However, $15 is relatively pretty good compared to the amount of time you have to be transported to the airport. Third is the customer ease. Now, of course, by car, it's like the most feasible in the way that you are most at ease. However, compared to the bus, of course, by train, it's a bit more relaxed, and so we think it's a medium average. And as for CO2 emission, of course, by car, CO2 emission per person, please mind, that by car, it's definitely going to be the highest, and by bus, it's medium. However, by train, due to the amount of people it's going to be transporting, per person, the CO2 emission is definitely the least. This is why we believe train is definitely the most, compared to the different factors, it's the most reasonable and the most beneficial considering those various factors. Now, average departing and arrival to the Montréal-Trudeau Airport is 11.1 million passengers, but that's not considering the connecting flights. So 11.1 million passengers are departing Montréal or arriving. So this is an extra to our normal everyday congestion. Now, in 2006, we expect the traffic to increase by 27% of passengers. So 27% in 2006 is a great amount of increase. However, this is further gonna increase with time, with other across the years. This passenger traffic will again have an effect on the congestion or the motor traffic, which is also 25%. So our target market in our project, which we want to recommend to you, is the Montreal residents who are in downtown, which represent 20%, and of course passengers who come to Montreal for business purposes. Now I will give the floor for Laurent, who will go on with the alternatives and which to recommend.
So there are 4 recommendations that the 3 consultants have came up with. So the first one is having a 747 shuttle bus from downtown area to the airport. The second one is to have a reserved bus lane on the 20 for the 747 bus. Third is the aerial train from the Lucien Lallier or the central station of Montreal to the airport. And fourth, a non-dedicated shuttle from Montreal to the airport. Now we looked at these 4 very carefully, but we also kept something in mind. There's also a 5th option that we thought of, which is the extension of the current metro infrastructure. Now this is a very feasible and interesting option and alternative. However, with further analysis with this 5th, we decided that it was not feasible enough compared to the aero train alternative, which is why we recommend the 3rd aero train with all our analysis, keeping in mind. Now, to implement this, we also regarded the OPUS system. Now, we don't just want to improve or add in a train system. We also want to improve the current OPUS card. Now, what is this? This is a short-term to medium-term implementation. And what is this? Well, currently, the OPUS can only add in tickets or passes or monthly passes and whatsoever. However, we want to add monetary value in these cards, which means you can add in from $50 to $100 at maximum into these cards. Why should we do this? Well, first, it encourages the population to use the public transportation by purchasing these OPUS cards. Now, by having monetary value, you allow merchants and stores to adapt with these cards and want customers with OPUS cards to come and spend and buy their products with using the OPUS cards. Now, by doing this, you will also reduce congestions. We know that congestion is a huge problem, and we want to reduce this, which will also reduce carbon emissions. This will also, by extensioning the OPUS functionalities, it will add additional revenue that could fund for future transportational projects, and especially the current one, which is the aero train. So how are we going to do this? Well, first, currently the OPUS division already has the technology. All it needs is some modifications. But before we get to that, how are we going to obtain revenue with this implementation? Well, merchants will then, who would want customers to use their OPUS cards in their stores, would have to purchase a small OPUS reading machine. Now, this machine will be paid by the merchants, which will add into the revenue, or recharging stations, which are independent. You can add value to the cards at the cashier. However, if the person does not wish to buy anything, they can add value to these standalone machines, which adds traffic to the stores. Now, like I said before, the current OPUS technology is capable of adding this functionality. If we add this functionality, the current OPUS card does not need to be changed. People with the current OPUS cards will use their OPUS card that they have. Nothing will be changed in terms of the consumer side, only on our side. So what are the advantages of having this card? Well, first of all, it is much safer than debit and credit card. Because it's limited to a $50 to $100 limit, losing the card will only lose, it would be like having cash. If it's credit or debit, you're losing an account, which is a larger amount of money. Now, also by obtaining an Opus card, for those who don't travel with public transportation often, this will give the opportunity for them to try it out, since the Opus card is not just for public transportation now. And also, again, I would like to emphasize that this will also increase extra revenue that can fund for future transportation, especially for the aero train. So for this Opus extension, target customers are the Montreal residents of the greater area, so that includes Centre-Ville and also South Shore and North Shore, and also frequent travelers to Montreal, so from anywhere else. When they have purchased this card, they will then be more comfortable traveling from the airport to Montreal with the aero train implementation, which we'll later on go into details. And also tourists will also be able to take advantage of using this card. Now I'll pass you on to Gabriel, who will get into the aero train implementation.
Thank you, Laurent. So let's talk about what the airport has as concerns. One of them was that the parking situation. They're about to reach capacity, but they're afraid that if we implement the aero train, then they would get less revenue on the parking because there'd be less and less people using private cars. On one end, yes, initially when the aero train starts working, they will have less people coming in with the cars, which in a way is going to alleviate some of the traffic issues that they have coming into the airport. However, we also expect volume traffic through the airport to increase by a significant amount, which is going to raise back the fact that more parking will be used. So in the end, we're not reaching capacity all the way, but it's not going to affect the demand for parking as much, so it wouldn't be a significant loss in revenue for the airport. Now, for the train station, however, the third company that will be operating the shuttle is going to be able to pay a lease for the use of the premises of the station, as well as Canada Pacific and Canada National, who can pay also leases to get a train shuttle from the airport to the Dorval Metro train station. So that's another way of adding value to the station that we're going to be using. We're going to be having people pay for one of the sections, but at the same time we're connecting directly to all the train stations immediately. So those are just different ways of making things easier and getting some more revenue for them. Now, as to where so also we are going to have the need to increase the tracks. Who's going to pay for the increase of tracks, which is actually for the air terminal, we need to do two things. First of all, we need to design it, and that's going to take a little bit. Hiring the architect, getting the logistics of it ready, and the actual building as well. This is the most time-consuming portion of the project, and also the one that's going to be one of the most expensive ones. Yes, you cannot go back, but the availability of being able to go to the train station, to be able to go downtown, and in the future, once we reach capacity at the airport, to be able to go to, for example, Mirabel Airport and be able to utilize that as a shuttle in between the two, that's going to give us a lot of opportunities for growth in the future. So that's why it's a good idea to invest and still commit to this project. We need to expand the rail networks. We need to have more docks. We currently Canada Pacific and Canada National are already operating at capacity, so we need to add more rails to that. Now, as we're building our rails, perhaps Canada is also interested, Canada Pacific and National, they're interested in adding some of the rails for themselves as well, so they can extend their capacity. So now that we have the crew over there working already, they can help us pitch in with some of the costs, which is going to reduce our own as well. So that's another way of just making this more affordable and more feasible. So this doesn't take as much because the area is already there. We just need to get a crew over there and start designing it. It's not very intricate, so it will take about 18 months to do. We didn't want to go into the Gare Centrale. We want to go to the Lucien Allier metro station, which is also the train station. All we need to do is just add in a few more docks, a few more platforms, which is a small expansion. It's nothing crazy. We do need to make accessibility to the public transportation a little bit easier because we're going to have increased traffic through these areas. So we need to improve on these things as well. Now that's going to help, as the case states, we're going to help deliver the area and improve the value of it. That will take about 30 minutes, 24 minutes. Yeah. So about the whole project, it's about $600 million. The association, the airport is going to pitch in $200 million from that. We estimate operating expenses at about 70 to 74 million, and we can go how we estimated this into the Q&A. So we expect to be able to pay back in about 4 to 5 years. Thank you for your time, and we open the floor to questions.
Okay, I'd like to hear you a bit about your new solutions because when you were talking about the target market, you were comparing bus to train to car and taxi, and then after that you told us that you wanted the aero train. But I haven't heard nothing about reserve lane for example. Talk to me a bit about that type of solution compared with the aero train.
Correct. So currently the way is, if we have a reserve lane for the bus, it wouldn't be able to make it, it's going to make more congestion problems along the other lines, and that's going to influence with the
Yeah, why?
because there's a limited space on the lanes.
Yeah, but in total, why on average would it increase the congestion?
As we can see, when there's either construction or, for example, the Champlain Bridge, when they have a reserved lane for the buses from 45 to Montreal, it causes congestions because it changes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes at the junctions. So by doing so in the 20 for a reserved lane will also guarantee cause congestion, which is why we would not want to furthermore cause more congestion, which is already congested currently.
Concerning your short-term solution, how this will help the situation between the airport and downtown?
Currently, we just want to have a platform to get people to use the public transportation, which is using the Opus card, the extension of the Opus card. In parallel, which takes much longer, which is the aerotrain implementation. The Opus is only there to provide a platform for future customers that will use the aerotrain system from the airport to downtown area.
So between today and the time that the aerotrain will be available, there is no solution for now.
Well, there's always a 747. We did not say that we want to omit it. It needs to be continued as a short-term solution. And the Opus card will also attract other people to use the 747 for now, while the project of the aerotrain continues.
Do you think that there will be a way to optimize the 747? Do you think of something that could help this solution in the meantime?
Currently what's happening is the 747 comes in when there's let's say at 2 o'clock on a Friday, the airport is packed. All the flights just came in internationally from within Canada as well. And when people are coming out, they don't wait more than 10 minutes before they get on a bus. So in that aspect, it's very efficient already, but we can make it even more eco-friendly, maybe a lower cost, because right now we just need to have buses waiting online. We know what the schedules are for the airplane, so it's easier to adapt, but it's more costly right now to meet the demand when it's necessary.
In the slide where you have the target markets and you compare bus, train, and taxi, you have a number of criteria here, but you don't mention the cost for society, the cost for the system. So it means that you based your choice, be it the train, based on a number of criteria, but you didn't consider the cost of implementing the solution.
Yes. Well, the thing is, that slide was for comparing the train versus the bus and versus the bus.
The car taxi. The car taxi.
Yes, correct. So just comparing with other factors, which one is the best? It was train. Now, in our cost-benefit financials, we showed if that specific train implementation would be profitable. And we saw that, I know it's definitely a high amount of initial investment. However, we believe in 4 to 5 years, we definitely can break even. And the good thing about this aero train implementation is that it's sustainable. That is, since in the years to come, there's going to be further growth, further amount of passengers coming in and out of Montreal. We believe this is the most efficient and most sustainable improvement to the infrastructure of transportation in Montreal.
Okay, and in the short term, you were talking about focus technology. You want to enhance that, but
I'm
for the
sorry,
747.
time we have for questions, I'm sorry.